So what were your dolls like?
When paper dolls mostly, but when the corn was ripening and about ready to be, when you picked corn, it was called corn shucking. You would take this corn off of the stalk, stretch, smooth out the corn leaf, whatever you call it, and you would tear down part of it and let the silk in there was their hair, and that was your doll. You improvised a lot. There were no toys. There was no, a little train maybe, but I'm talking about toys like today. Wasn't even dreamed about.
So what was your average day growing up? You go to school and then...
When you came home, there were jobs you did. One of mine, I washed all the dishes at home. I had to stand on a box. I couldn't reach the kitchen cabinet to wash dishes, but everybody had a job. And you did those jobs. And if you didn't, you were in trouble.
So you do dishwashing and then what else?
Huh?
I know you went out into the fields. You would go out in the fields as well?
Oh, goodness, yes. Women worked in the field just like the men did.
Yeah.
It was difficult times. Very difficult times. So, you know what, one of the things I remember we played in, we used to have a big, I guess it would be a water tank, sewer that you use for the sewer, put out in the road for water to run through in the country. But in the city, they're put in for sewer lines. Big tanks. One had been damaged. I remember there was a corner that had rusted out in that sink, in that tank. And I had a girlfriend that lived close by, down in my house nearly all the time. And we would get in that tank and talk and roll. You'd roll that tank, and we'd scoot and roll in that tank. And I never will forget, Merle he was aggravated all the time, the youngest of the two boys. You never knew what he was going to do. So this girl's name was Louise. And Louise was quite a character. So we were sitting in that tank talking. And Louise, unbeknown to Merle, she had her toe hooked under that slit where it had rusted out. And Merle came up, and we didn't know he was there, rolled that tank, nearly cut her toe off. Scared the daylights out of us. He got in bad trouble for doing it too. But I thought so many times, what looked so innocent could have been so, we wouldn't let probably somebody play in something like that now and be such a hazard. But we never thought anything about it.
What did y'all do for fun while you were growing up?
It wasn't much.
Like a county fair or something?
You went to carnivals, you went skating. We always had a roller rink somewhere. Football games, activities at school, church activities. That was really about all you had.
Were you in any activities at school?
You had activities at school.
What did you do?
Well, you had, they had choir programs just like we do today. The football games. I always sold cold drinks at the football game. There wasn't a whole lot, but those were the things, occasionally. Probably a big deal then was you'd go to town on Saturday night. And you'd meet, today they'd call it hanging out. Well, at that time, you just met downtown and talked and visited a while, and that was a big deal.
It's downtown commerce?
Oh, yeah. On the square, that was a big thing. We had a Western theater, all they played was Western things. And 2 or 3 little cafes where people sometimes met. Not often. You didn't have money to buy anything,
So how would you get to downtown and to school and to church? Did y'all have a car?
Well,
or did
no,
you walk?
an old Model T. I don't think we ever even had a Model A. The Model Ts came out and you had to get out and crank those things, and they could break an arm if they kicked up on you. You couldn't go very far in them. But after I think the Model A's came out next. They looked more like a car and acted more like a car. But I think the next thing we got was an old truck. So there weren't very many new cars either. If you had a new car, you were rich. I mean, and I don't mean brand new. I'm talking about just maybe 2 or 3 years old. That's a new car.
After you got married, what's the first car y'all bought?
Oh, you wouldn't. I can still remember that thing. We didn't have any money. Daddy was going to school and working. When he got out of the Navy, when he was called into the Navy, he was working for Sears and Roebuck, stocking shelves to be shipped when somebody ordered things. When he came back, there was no work for people. But it had been required by Franklin D. Roosevelt, that if you had a job before you were called into the service, when you came back home, you were guaranteed to have a job equivalent to that. So when Daddy came back, he was guaranteed a job with Sears. So he worked at Sears for a long time while he went to school, and made enough. We paid for that apartment, and we bought an old Packard. I think it was a 47. It's 40-something. I think it's 1947. That old thing would die on you, and it always died at the worst time ever. One time it died on me. I never was so scared. It died on the train tracks. There was nothing I could do except sit there. And when I saw that it was a streetcar track, and I saw that streetcar coming, I thought, Lord, there was nothing you could do. It was like it was your worst enemy. And the day that happened, I had driven Daddy. I needed the car for something, and I drove him to work. And it was after he got out of the car, this car went there. And you know how I went dressed that day, never dreaming something like that. My house coat, my gown, and an old house, and I mean old house coat. And I had to get out of that car to get help to get over. And somebody finally came and pushed me off. When he got me pushed a little ways, it started. I went home. It was a lemon.
How did Granddaddy put himself through college?
The government paid for him to go to school. He went 5 nights a week. He got home. He was working full time. He got off work about 5 o'clock and went to school at 6, so he didn't have time to come home and go back. So he would stay at work that extra 30 or 40 minutes and go on to school. I don't know how, it took him about 4 years to go. I think he had about a year more, probably 3, had gone about 3 years, when one of the college professors called somebody at Radio City, called a college professor and asked that professor if he could find him a real smart, hard-working guy. And that college professor recommended Daddy. That's how he got at Radio City. He was still in school at that time. And it was Roy Hill that run Radio City. And so he called Daddy, and Daddy went in for an interview, and he hired him. And he worked, I think he still had another year to go in school. Well, by the time, he had been out of school, when he graduated, he was assigned a salesman, and Daddy was never a salesman, ever. But he was assigned a territory in West Texas. And he would leave on Friday night no, on Sunday night, in time to get to whatever town he was going to first. And he would come home on Friday night to bring his laundry for me to do, for him to go again on Sunday. And we lived like that several years. And then Roy Hill called Daddy in and wanted to know if he was interested in buying his AFC. And that's how he became a partner in AFC.
So he went to school at SMU.
He graduated with he started going for a business law degree. But he decided to drop the law part. It would take him a little longer to do that. So he graduated with a business administration.
By the way, here's everyone just sitting around.